कम से कम दो एरियाज़ में बदलूँगा जो इन्होंने तस्वीर खींची। एक तो है ये सतह जिस पे ये बात कर रहे थे, उस सतह पे मैं नहीं बात करूँगा। मैं ज़रा उसको एक माइक्रो लेवल पे ले आऊँगा बात को। और दूसरा ये है कि इन्होंने उर्दू में बात की, मैं अंग्रेज़ी में करूँगा, तो ये दो चेंजेस आएंगी। Basically, what I would like to talk about is the role of a university or an institute, in particular a business school, in fostering entrepreneurship. So we do two things. We engage in training, and we also we engage in something that has become very popular in the last 30 years called incubation activities. Right now I'll just talk about training. And then if there's time and other people are interested, we can talk a little bit about incubation as well. We started out on our enterprise or entrepreneurship training program about 7-8 years ago. And we focused on a few things. The first was students. The second was the content of their training. And within content, of course, there were issues of how to develop business plans and the scale of the ambition that students should have, and so on and so forth. Over time, we had to make some changes. But let me now just give you a sense. Students, all right. Well, these referred mostly to our own BBA students. These were the people who were coming into our entrepreneurship classes, okay? Training, well, we had a very formal academic style. It involved classroom lectures, case studies, business plan competitions as well, and so on and so forth, but a very formal style. Business planning, yes, we encourage people to think about all the aspects of their proposed businesses, their proposed startups, in an integrated fashion, long term, and of course think about all the scenarios that could arise and develop financial and other models to deal with them. And the last point is ambition. This was an underlying, if unstated, assumption that people should think big and they should arrange the finances to accomplish big aims. Over time, we have not been very happy with the outcome of that, let's call it a conventional approach, and we have changed or modified important elements in all four areas that I've just mentioned. First of all, students. We do not focus our enterprise training any longer on formal full-time students. We now take anyone who would like to get training in enterprise, in entrepreneurship. You can literally walk off the street and there are no admission tests, no SATs, no aptitude tests. We simply do an interview, and if on the basis of the interview we think you have the inner drive and motivation and passion to run a business of your own, to do some startup, to start off in a new direction, we will be happy to accept you into the certificate program. Then is the academic content. Our program still has academic content. It focuses a lot on things that are very important and necessary for people to run their enterprises, such as accounting and marketing and business law and so on and so forth. All of these things are important. But we have emphasized and elevated and increased the role of something we call motivational training, developing an entrepreneurial mindset. I'll have a lot more to say about it, but that has become a very important aspect of the training that we do. People learn from each other. People learn from other people's experiences. So in our classrooms for entrepreneurship training, we try to expose them to people who have tried their hand at businesses, successful and unsuccessful, it doesn't matter. Just get them in there to tell their story, and it's amazing how much motivation that can generate and how much learning that can generate for the people who are interested in just doing something on their own. So we've changed that. Business plans, you know, when you talk to academics, they have a very complicated understanding of business plans. They want to plan everything in advance, all scenarios that could occur, and be prepared for this and this and that. Frankly, that's not how real businesses operate, and that's not how small businesses operate. Small businesses operate with small plans, and they must be agile because the external environment changes so often and so drastically sometimes that you just have to be flexible. So we focus on a one-page business plan. That's it. You need to have a plan. You need to have thought through your ideas a little bit, and you need to have some idea of where you'll go from wherever you're starting, what your goals are. But the important thing is to have the passion to do something, to be flexible enough to change your plans if circumstances change. Right? So we do.
This is my very unpleasant duty to remind you of the time.
So I will not talk about incubation, but I'll talk about the last change that we've also put in our training program, which is with respect to ambition. We don't really emphasize high ambition. We don't emphasize low ambition either. We basically emphasize modest ambition. Our approach is we tell people you can become an entrepreneur, you can start a business with the resources that you have available, with the resources at hand. That's a mindset issue. People often don't realize that they can do a lot with the resources at hand because they don't know how to count resources. They don't know what resources mean. Every time, you know, many times people think resources means access to a bank loan or access to big sums of money somewhere. Not necessarily true. Resources could be friends and family, it could be financing from someone, it could be a relationship that allows you to market something to someone, they could identify customers for you, supply relations, anything. The important thing is you just have to be motivated and think that with the resources you have at hand, you can do a lot. Now with these modifications, we have become much more satisfied with the training program we have at IBA for entrepreneurs. We have a very different mix in our class, and what we have learned, and this is the bottom line, is that a little motivation, a little capital, and a little training combined with internal passion, you know, it has to be driven internally by the people, is all you need to become an entrepreneur. And that's the bottom line that I leave with you at the moment. Please feel free to ask other questions. We can get into that later.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saab. We all want to, you know, listen more and more, but this is my very unpleasant duty to remind you of the time limitations, and I will request honorable panelists to confine their opening statements to 5 minutes only. So, Shoaib Saab,
thank you very much.
I will request you to now give us some food for thought.
I will not take that much time. As Dr. Saab also said that the overall speech by Dr. What I would like to say about entrepreneur right now, because I represent a profession which is from a job profile, not a purely entrepreneur. I am representing a technology industry as well. For me, an entrepreneur is basically a person who actually see a vision of innovation, which produce it and then to market it. And as an employee also, we all are entrepreneur if we see, because we also have to create an idea, to sell that idea, and to get it done things over there. And I will take 2 points from Dr. Ishrat's speech as well, where he said that the employee has changed, or the job profile has changed for the last 20 years, which I will also truly agree, because the last decade was of employee having a permanent job profiles. After that, the change was that the contract job, and the future is going to be for the entrepreneur. Everyone will be a freelancer or a kind of a contract to the assignment-based jobs. So evolving in future is the entrepreneur, every employee. So it is not only the entrepreneur who is doing their current businesses only. So we all, as a CFO, as a CEO, everybody needs to have that growth mindset in so this is important from that perspective. The other thing which Dr. Ishrat also mentioned about the silos, and this I have seen in my career as well up till now, working for multinationals as well. This is not only a issue with Pakistan, but this is an issue with overall industry as well. We do not communicate with each other. The companies who have been communicating within these silos have progressed, and we have so many successful stories from there as well. The last point which I would like to, after that I will end, is that for an entrepreneur, basic culture thing is to take the risk. It's not only for an individual entrepreneur or a businessman to take risk. It is also for each employee or as a professional, we also need to take risk to become that entrepreneur or to become into that mindset of entrepreneur. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Now I will request Mr. Ibrahim Kasombi, an experienced professional and a businessman who has a vast experience of working with startups and SME. So please enlighten us, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Saab. It's wonderful to be here and to do this brainstorming, ideas coming from Dr. Ishrat Hussain and, of course, before that, Zubair Saab. Being an entrepreneur myself and having gone through that process from the startup to a mid-sized company, and in fact 2 companies, and then more than that, the association with Karachi Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and dealing with the issues and problems that the business community, the companies and entrepreneurs who face the issues and talk to us, I probably would be able to give you some idea of the ecosystem that exists currently and what needs to be done. Interacting with so many people, having 20,000 members, and most of them, a very large part, we have members from a shopkeeper to the corporates, a broad cross-section of companies and people. We have a majority of members who are in the SME sector. And SME sector, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you all know, contributes about 35% of GDP into Pakistan's overall product makeup. But a very large part of that, and that was just mentioned by the master of ceremony, that we have an equal size of economy that are not measured in terms of GDP, which is undocumented. And what I see is a very large number of SMEs are undocumented, who otherwise can contribute. While you are undocumented, the problem is that you cannot grow, you cannot expand. Being undocumented, you do not have access to banks and to funding that comes from the banks. The issues that the entrepreneur faces, the new and the existing ones, come from several factors. I will enumerate one by one, 4 or 5 factors. Number 1 is the regulatory framework. The mindset of the tax policy makers and the enforcement level is such that they consider all SMEs as some kind of crooks and go for the witch hunting, squeezing the same set of people for collection of revenue, because our tax system is such, and the taxation model and structure and complex set of laws is such that new taxpayers are really difficult to come in the net. Our tax net has not broadened. Compared to India, 6% of the population, we are less than 1%. Why is that? It is not because the people don't want to pay taxes. They do by all means. If they want to give away charity, they give away so many hospitals, schools, institutions running with the funding, and the largest private ambulance service running in the world is funded by these very people who don't pay taxes, or rather do not. Actually, there is a fear factor. Fear factor is because of the complex set of laws and discretionary powers that are in the hands of the officials of inland revenue. There are, if you read the sections of the income tax ordinance or the sales tax ordinance, they are antiquated. I see the laws which are cut and paste from 1908, Code of Civil Procedures, Code of Criminal Procedures, such laws to the power to enter and search, the powers to arrest, the power to prosecute, and all these set of laws that govern the audit. There are no transparent audit parameters. So the small and medium enterprise has a fear factor. The corporates do have the capacity, the competency, the people who can handle the taxation issues without getting into too much stress. But as an entrepreneur, as an individual, as a proprietor, as an association of persons, when they receive a notice from a certain official, they go into stress. They do not have the capacity or the competency to deal with these legal issues, and this goes on and on, which is the primary reason for a very narrow and shallow tax base. This is one factor within the ecosystem, which is keeping a very large number of entrepreneurs and companies in an undocumented segment. We are missing on that segment in terms of tax collection, in terms of contribution to the GDP, in terms of employment. By far, the SMEs are the largest employer. About 3.5 million to 4 million young people come every year in the market seeking jobs. And who employs them? Not the PIA, not the steel mill, not the government. It is this very sector. Of course, they are employed in the large-scale industry. But if you compare the two, the people who come in the market with the skill set are generally employed in a very, very large number by the SME sector in semi-skilled or skilled jobs. The graduates from IBA or LUMS or some institutions or ICAP are employed by the corporations and corporates, or they go outside the country. So this is the sector which we have to work and nurture and harness their potential. The third one is access to funding. The banks are highly collateralized. If an entrepreneur or a startup goes to a bank, he is asked for a collateral. And that collateral is generally not available. The kind of funding that that startup needs is not easily available, because the largest borrower in Pakistan is the government of Pakistan. In the next budget, you will see that the government will borrow 1,800 billion rupees to meet the fiscal deficit and to meet its day-to-day operations. So this is the greatest competitor that the SMEs have. Now, what to do about it? How we can bring... Another factor that I would say in the ecosystem is the detachment between the academia and the industry. The graduates that are being churned out every day. Gali mein MBA ho raha hai. There are institutions which are giving MBA degrees without having the kind of faculty, the kind of the people, the trainers who equip the graduates to be employable in the industry or trade. With the exceptions of institutions like IBA or LUMS or other few institutions. This is not enough, and this is also very counterproductive to the people who, while studying and investing a lot of money, do not know that the degree they will get is no good for them to be employed at a certain pay scale. So these factors have to be considered and come together. The gaps between these factors have to be removed in order to create an ecosystem where these factors work together in unison and in coordination. How it will come? It will come from the policy level, from the policy makers to draw a roadmap. And I'll just take another minute. The positives that I would like to point out. We have a very young population. We are the third largest English-speaking country in the world. And the learning curve is steep in our youth, in those who are educated, who educate from various institutions, no matter it's an elite institution or it's a mediocre one, but the learning curve is good. So we do have a potential. We do have the required platform and the ingredients to achieve that growth where we can adapt to the new technology, to the innovation, and to the disruption. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. So before I open the discussion, I would like to ask one question from each of our distinguished panelists to further elaborate their viewpoints. So, Dr. You talked about training, capacity building, incubation, flexibility in approach, and then, generating resources. So, my single question is that are you satisfied that educational institutions and academia is fulfilling its role to cultivate the future crop of entrepreneurs?
Well, most educational institutions, including IBA, educate students so that they may get good jobs. They're really not focused on enterprise and entrepreneurship, whether at the high level or the low level. So one answer to your question is no, that's not what they're focused on. But I'm not so worried about that because, again, what we have learned in the entrepreneurship business is that entrepreneurs are born, not made. And as a result, the entire educational establishment has rather little to do with the making of entrepreneurs. When somebody walks through our door and wants to get a little training, we are happy to provide that. But frankly, most of the people who want to become entrepreneurs do it themselves. They have the motivation and they go ahead and do it. We feel we can add a little bit. When they come through the door, we do it. And as I said, that's why we open the doors. We do not restrict it any longer, in our case at IBA, to full-time students or no aptitude test, nothing like that. Really, anyone can walk in through the door and we will entertain their application.
Thank you very much. So, Shoaib Sahab, you travel a lot and you talked about the cultural constraints